Hello my friends, welcome back to the channel. Very excited to have you here. So this is going to be another one of like the video essay types where I just sort of like babble at the camera, so hopefully you're coming along for the ride. This time around, because the Fantastic Beasts movie has come out and has flopped, eat it, a lot of people have been having that same discussion of, hey, I separate the art from the artist, and as a result of that old chestnut being reopened, people have been throwing around the term death of the author quite a bit without really understanding what it is that death of the author means. So, in today's episode, we're going to go over what death of the author actually means, where it comes from, how people are using it wrong, and what I think is a more holistic way to look at art and the relationship to its author. So first and foremost, the death of the author as a term refers to a 1967 essay by a French writer, French critic named Roland Barthes. I don't know, I don't speak French, so I apologize if I have like mangled that name. And it was in response to the idea that there was an ultimate meaning that could be derived from texts, from novels, stories, what have you, from art in general, by identifying what was going on in the author's life at the time that they wrote the work. You could parse out what the ultimate meaning, like the definitive meaning of the work was. And this, to a lot of people at the time, was revolutionary, right? Like, the idea of ambiguity in art was just really starting to take shape. The postmodernist movement was just really starting to take off in the 1960s and the 1970s, even though like some arguable postmodern works existed way before that. See Duchamp and the Water Fountain. But really, it was a kind of a stark departure from what people considered to be accurate criticism. For an example of what that would have looked like today, let's use music, because I want to talk about music in this part. That's why it's my video. In her most recent novel, Sinner Get Ready, Lingua Ignota has a song where she basically says, God will take your legs and your will to live. And there are a lot of references to losing your legs, losing mobility in your legs, and as a result, losing the will to live. Now, on its own, this is an arresting image. This is something that really elicits an emotional response from the listener. And I would argue can be open to a lot of different interpretation. Like, what does she mean by this? Is it just a perversion of sacred music? Is it not a perversion of sacred music and just showing how brutal Christianity can be? That's sort of like her whole aesthetic, right? Now, someone who does not ascribe to the death of the author mentality would say, no, we have to look at her life and see exactly what she was going through to understand those lines. And it's not without cause. At this time, when she was writing and recording the album, Kristen Hayter, who is the artist known as Lingua Ignota, had severe spinal injury as a result of sexual abuse from her at the time boyfriend, and was in danger of losing the function of her legs, losing the use of her legs. Now, someone who does not subscribe to the death of the author ideas would say that is the definitive meaning of that song. That is the definitive meaning of those lyrics in particular. Whereas Barthes would argue there is no definitive meaning. Maybe that is what she meant when she wrote it, perhaps, but there's no way for us to know. And even if we do know, we are welcome to derive our own meaning from the juxtaposition of the music, the imagery in the rest of the song, the imagery in the rest of the album. All of that can inform our decision. So now that we have a clear understanding of what death of the author means, it means death of objective, universal meaning of the work of art as laid out by the author. But what does it not mean, and how are people using it? Because guess what? That Venn diagram is a circle. So like I said, this has come up quite a bit talking about, I feel like I'm going to spend my whole life talking about J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter, Fantastic Beasts, all of that nonsense. So many people are using the death of the author as a way of justifying supporting authors who are either in their work or in their personal life not great people. And as we just discussed, that's not what death of the author means. People are deliberately misinterpreting, which is hysterical, so ironic, the essay, Death of the Author, to just use it as a way of saying, I separate the art from the artist, which is, if you are going to read a problematic author, like I said on one of my first episodes of this series, of this YouTube channel, I personally would make sure that they are no longer getting money from the things that I'm buying. My example was Lovecraft, which, by the way, I did a video on TikTok about Robert W. Chambers, and I had a passing reference to Lovecraft being racist. And the people who jumped in that comment section to be like, why would you feel guilty reading Lovecraft? Like, grow up. I'm like, bro, growing up has nothing to do with being not comfortable with racism, like blatant racism. I would argue being racist makes you okay with blatant racism. So grow up, I guess, is a euphemism for become racist, but I've sidestepped what I was actually talking about, just like, come on. J.K. Rowling is still making money off of it. So you can't say, oh, I separate the art from the artist, death of the author, when you're still buying wands, when you're still buying Bertie Bott's Every Flavor Beans, while you're still buying the books and seeing the shitty movies that they took Johnny Depp out of, but kept Ezra Miller in. Woo! But, as I said at the outset, I believe that there is a more holistic approach to the new historical criticism, which is when you very much base your interpretation of an artistic work based on what was happening at the time it was made, in the creator's life, and with the creator's peers, and the death of the author mentality, which says none of that matters. I believe that there is a middle ground between the two, and I came up with it as far as I know, and I call it projectionism. Now I want you to imagine a movie screen, right? It's flat, it's white, uninteresting. The movie is just projected onto it, and it's a clear one-to-one representation of what was shot, what was edited, and what the director wanted everyone to see, right? Now let's imagine that that projection is actually the viewer, the person that is coming to see the work of art, not the work of art itself. Now, as an artist, I would want the most interesting shaped screen for people to project themselves onto. So maybe instead of flat, it's curved, and there's things in the way that cast shadows, or it's a cityscape that's then placed upon something interesting about what people are going to be projecting themselves onto. This, I believe, is the more interesting way to look at the dichotomy between death of the author and new historicism. There are elements of what the author put into the work. That's the things that are augmenting the screen, if you will. But there's also the life experiences and the own like dispositions, prejudices, ideas that the person's coming. That's what's projected onto the screen itself. Now, the screen is static. Anyone who looks at the Mona Lisa is seeing the Mona Lisa just the same as anyone else. Anyone else who reads A Tale for the Time Being is reading the same words as anyone else. And a lot of the personality and the personal experiences of the artist went into the Mona Lisa, went into A Tale for the Time Being. To deny that they're there, I think, is dismissive of the creative act. But people reading or seeing the same work have wildly different reactions to it. Have you ever walked out of a movie with a friend and you loved the movie? You thought it was the best thing that you've ever seen. You thought it was the best in the series. You thought the cinematography was amazing. You thought the characters were well written and so wonderfully nuanced. And it had such wonderful and deep themes that the other entries in that series just didn't have. Like, you love the other entries in the series, all of them, but this one immediately head and shoulders was your favorite. And you turn to say all of that to your friend and they go, man, that sucked, huh? It's an arresting moment. You both watched the same movie with the same characters, the same cinematography, the same ideas, the same themes, the same actors, same words. It was the same movie, but you've had wildly different responses. And that cannot be because of the death of the author necessarily. Bits and pieces that the creator put there are very much there, and they more than likely come from aspects of that creator's life. But it is met with the aspects of the viewer's life, and those together become the work of art. It is not the artifact, and it is not the art viewer, but it is the synthesis of the two that is art. I think this is an interesting new way to be able to talk about art, talk about books, movies, TV, what have you, while having an intellectual conversation, but at the same time letting people like things that they like and dislike things that they dislike. What do you guys think about that? So let me know in the comments, what was your perception of the death of the author before this video? How annoyed do you get when people misuse it, especially when they're talking about Rowling? And how do you guys feel about this idea of projectionism? I've had a few ideas about it. I've tried writing about it a bit, but I think it needs a little bit more refinement. The play that I recently pitched, if you've seen that video, I'll link it down below, is very much built on the idea of projectionism. And I'm interested to get it up on its feet so I can sort of like give the philosophy a test run. But the people who watch my videos are remarkably intelligent, remarkably artistic individuals. So let me know what you think about it down in the comments. I am so fascinated to see what you all have to say. I think we're onto something here. But as always, if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. Follow me on TikTok, Jen Insight, on Instagram, Jen_Insight. It's all in the link tree. Just click it up, give it a little click clue. And as always, I am so humbled and grateful that any of you are watching this, to be 100% honest. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. Catch you next time. Love ya.